Elderly woman builds robot house from scrap, and what happens next is unbelievable. Dorothy Mitchell never imagined that at 70 years old, she would be evicted from the house she had lived in for 15 years. The landlord had raised the rent by 40%, and her minimum wage retirement income could no longer cover the costs. That's when she remembered the shed in the backyard, where her husband Harold kept tools and machine parts before passing away 2 years ago. Among the dusty scrap, Dorothy glimpsed a solution no one could have imagined. "Mrs. Dorothy, you have 2 more weeks to leave," said Bradley, the new owner, knocking on the door. "I've already told you, I can't lower the rent." "I understand, Mr. Bradley," she replied, wiping her hands on her apron. "I just need a few more days to organize my things." After he left, Dorothy walked to the backyard and pushed the heavy shed door open. The sunlight revealed dozens of small motors, rusty gears, hydraulic tubes and metal structures that Harold had collected over the years as a mechanic. She picked up an old notebook and began to draw. Her hands trembled a little, but her mind worked with a precision she hadn't felt in decades. 40 years ago, before marrying and dedicating herself entirely to her family, Dorothy had studied mechanical engineering for 3 years at the State University. "If I can't pay a fixed rent, I'll make a house that moves," she murmured to herself, calculating weights and measurements on paper. During the next 2 weeks, Dorothy worked tirelessly on the project. She woke up at 5 in the morning and only stopped when it got dark. She welded parts with Harold's old equipment, assembled hydraulic systems, and tested electric motors. Ruth, the neighbor next door, watched from her window with growing concern. "Dorothy, what are you doing in there?" she asked one day, approaching the fence. "A project, Ruth. Something that will solve my housing problem." "But what kind of project? Those strange noises are bothering." "You'll understand soon," said Dorothy, returning to her work. The structure began to take shape in the 3rd week. Dorothy had disassembled a small prefabricated house she found in the shed and repositioned it on a metal base. 6 articulated legs, made from scaffold tubes and hydraulic pistons, supported the entire construction. The control system was simple, a panel with red and green buttons that she installed near the door. Each button controlled a different leg, allowing the house to literally walk. "Mom, what is this horrible thing?" asked Jennifer, her daughter, when she visited in the 4th week. "It's my new home, dear." "What do you mean, new home?" "Mom, this is crazy. You can't live in a thing like that." Dorothy sighed and invited her daughter inside. The interior was cozy, a single bed, a portable stove, a small table, and an old armchair that had belonged to Harold. "Everything is organized here, Jennifer. I have electricity, running water that I can connect wherever I stop, and I can move if someone bothers me." "But Mom, this is ridiculous. People will laugh at you. And where will you park this thing?" "On vacant lots, empty parking spaces, anywhere they'll have me." Jennifer sat in the armchair, covering her face with her hands. "I can't let my mother live in a crazy contraption. Come live with me." "Your apartment has 2 bedrooms, Jennifer. You, Stephen, and the kids already take up all the space." "Then let's look for a retirement home. There are some nice places with activities." "I don't want to go to a retirement home," Dorothy said firmly. "I want my independence." The first test of the mobile house happened on a Sunday morning. Dorothy pressed the red buttons, and the hydraulic legs emitted a hissing sound, slowly lifting the structure off the ground. She then activated the movement controls. The house wobbled dangerously in the first steps, but soon found a steady rhythm. Dorothy smiled, realizing she could drive her dwelling through the neighborhood's narrow streets. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The neighbors came out of their homes when they heard the metallic noise approaching. Children ran after the robot house, laughing and shouting. Adults pointed and took pictures with their cell phones. "Look at that, what a crazy thing," exclaimed Mrs. Margaret, gesturing to her friends. "That woman has lost her mind," commented Mr. Robert, shaking his head. Dorothy continued walking down the main street, testing the structure's stability. The house responded well to commands, though it was slow and noisy. When she reached the neighborhood's central square, a small crowd had gathered. "Is it some kind of circus?" a child asked her mother. "I don't know, sweetie. It must be some kind of advertisement for something." Dorothy stopped the house in the center of the square and came out the side door. Silence fell as people realized it wasn't a performance, but someone actually living there. "Excuse me," she said, addressing the group. "Does anyone know of a lot where I could park for a few days?" People looked at each other confused. A middle-aged man stepped forward. "You live in there?" "Yes, I do. It's my home." "But why?" "Because I have nowhere else to go, and this was the solution I found." The man scratched his beard, thoughtful. "There's an empty lot over on Maple Street. The owner is my cousin. I can ask if he'll let you stay for a few days." "I'd really appreciate it," said Dorothy, returning to her mobile home. On the empty lot, Dorothy lived peacefully for 2 weeks. She connected water hoses to the nearest public faucet and used an extension cord for light. In the morning, she walked to the corner store to buy groceries. At night, she sat in her doorway, reading books borrowed from the library. The peaceful routine was interrupted when Kenneth Parker, a reporter from the local newspaper, showed up with a photographer. "Mrs. Dorothy, I'm from the Morning Herald. We'd like to do a story about your innovation." "I'm not sure I want to be in the paper," she replied, suspicious. "Oh, it would be good for you. You'll become famous, maybe even appear on television." "And would I get anything out of it?" "Well, we don't pay for interviews, but fame always brings opportunities." Dorothy thought about her tight financial situation. Her pension barely covered food and medicine. "All right, but I want to see the story before you publish it." "Of course, no problem." The interview lasted an hour. Kenneth asked questions about how she built the house, why she decided to live there, and what her future plans were. Dorothy explained the assembly process and her motivations in detail. "Do you have an engineering background?" asked the reporter. "I studied for 3 years at the State University before I got married." "And you dropped out to take care of your family?" "Yes. Back then women did that. Do you regret it?" Dorothy was silent for a few seconds. "Regret is a very strong word. I made the choices I thought were right at the time." 3 days later, the story was published with the headline, "Eccentric Elderly Woman Builds Crazy House and Disturbs Neighborhood." The text emphasized the invention's most bizarre aspects and insinuated that Dorothy might have mental health issues. "Mom, you've become the laughingstock of the whole town," said Jennifer, waving the newspaper when she visited. "I haven't read it yet. Look here. The strange structure frightens children and generates complaints from residents. And here, mental health expert suggests evaluation for the elderly woman." Dorothy sat down heavily in her armchair. "They promised to show the article before publishing. Mom, you need to stop this madness. You're becoming a laughingstock. Where am I going to live, Jennifer? Explain to me where I'll live if I dismantle my house." "I told you, at the nursing home. There are openings, the government pays part, you'll have company." "I don't want forced company, I want my independence." "Independence? Living in a crazy machine that could collapse at any moment?" "This machine gives me more dignity than living off others' charity." The argument was interrupted by the arrival of Emily, Dorothy's granddaughter and Jennifer's daughter. The 16-year-old had read the newspaper article and ran to the vacant lot. "Grandma, I saw your picture in the paper." "Oh, Emily, don't talk to me about that," sighed Dorothy. "I thought it was amazing. Did you really build this by yourself?" Jennifer turned to her daughter. "Emily, don't encourage your grandmother in this craziness." "Mom, stop calling Grandma crazy. She solved her problem the way she could." "Emily is right, Jennifer," said Dorothy softly. "I didn't do anything illegal. I didn't hurt anyone. I don't bother the neighbors. I'm just trying to live with dignity." "Dignity? Living in something that looks like it's out of a science fiction movie." "Grandma, can I see how it works inside?" asked Emily. Dorothy smiled for the first time in days and invited her granddaughter in. She showed her each system, the movement controls, the hydraulic system, the adapted electrical installation. "That's so cool, Grandma. You have to teach me how you did this. You have a knack for engineering, Emily. You always have. That's what I want to study when I finish high school." Outside, Jennifer was on the phone with her husband, asking for support to convince her mother to leave the dangerous contraption. 3 days after the article was published, the situation got complicated. Richard James, the Condo Association president for the building near the vacant lot, appeared with a petition signed by 20 families. "Mrs. Dorothy, I'm here representing the neighborhood residents. What can I do for you? We want you to remove this construction from here. It's bothering the families, scaring the children." "How is it scaring them? I stay quiet here, I don't make noise." "But it's a very strange thing, ma'am. People are afraid it might fall, explode. I don't know. Would you like to see inside? I can show you it's safe." No, thank you. What I want is for you to leave here by the end of the week." "And where will I go?" "That's not our problem, ma'am. You have family. Seek help from them." Dorothy felt her heart tighten. She had found a little corner to live in peace, but even there she was being rejected. "I need more time to get organized." "1 week, Mrs. Dorothy. After that, I'll call the city inspectors." That night, Dorothy could barely sleep. Sitting at the door of her mobile home, watching the stars, she thought about giving up everything. Maybe Jennifer was right. Maybe she really was just an eccentric old woman disturbing the neighborhood's peace. In the morning, she was surprised by a knock on the door. It was Emily carrying a school backpack. "Hi, Grandma, I came to help." "Help with what, dear?" "To improve your house. I studied some things about hydraulics and automation in school." "Does your mother know you're here?" "She thinks I'm at school. I'll explain later." Emily examined the house's control system with a critical eye. "Grandma, if we install stability sensors, the house will move much better. And if we put in an automatic steering system, it will be safer." "Where did you learn these things?" "In the technical course I take after school. I'm studying mechatronics." "Mechatronics? Wow, how modern. It's the integration of mechanics, electronics, and computing, Grandma, perfect for improving your invention." For 2 weeks, grandmother and granddaughter worked together every afternoon. Emily brought electronic parts she could borrow from school, and Dorothy applied her practical engineering experience. The result was impressive. The house began to move with much smoother and more precise movements. An improvised gyroscope system maintained balance, and proximity sensors prevented collisions. "Now it looks like a house of the future," said Emily proudly. "You're the one who brought the modern ideas, dear. I only had old knowledge." "Knowledge doesn't age, Grandma. The foundation of engineering is always the same." Their harmony was broken when Jennifer discovered where her daughter spent her afternoons. "Emily, I knew you were lying about staying at school." "Mom, I didn't lie. I said I had a school project, and I really do." "A school project is helping your grandmother with this madness?" "It's studying engineering in practice, Mum. I've learned more in these 2 weeks than in months of theoretical classes." Dorothy intervened. "Jennifer, Emily is helping me a lot, and she's learning important things." "Mom, you don't understand. You're influencing my daughter with your crazy ideas." "What crazy ideas?" asked Emily, irritated. "Grandma solved a real problem with creativity and knowledge." "A real problem? The real problem is that you two are running away from reality." The argument was interrupted by the arrival of Walter Thompson, a 68-year-old retired engineer who lived 3 blocks away. He had heard about the mobile house and had been observing it from afar for a few weeks. "Excuse me," he said, approaching the group. "I'm Walter, a retired civil engineer. May I take a look at the construction?" Dorothy and Emily exchanged glances. Then Dorothy replied, "Of course, feel free." Walter examined every detail of the structure with a professional eye. He tested the stability of the legs, checked the welds, analyzed the hydraulic system. "Impressive," he murmured after 20 minutes of inspection. "Who designed this?" "My grandmother," said Emily with pride, "and I helped with the electronic improvements." "Do you have an engineering background?" he asked Dorothy. 3 years at the State University 40 years ago." "And you never practiced again?" "No. I got married, had children, dedicated myself to the family." Walter shook his head thoughtfully. "What a waste. You clearly have a natural talent." "A waste?" repeated Jennifer. "You think this strange thing is good?" "I think it's brilliant," Walter replied frankly. "Creative solution, competent execution, smart use of repurposed materials." In terms of sustainable engineering, it's exemplary. Dorothy felt a wave of validation she hadn't experienced in decades. You really think so? I have 40 years of experience, Mrs. Dorothy. Mrs. Dorothy, in 40 years, I've seen few projects as inventive as this one. Of course, there are aspects that can be improved, but the basic conception is brilliant. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out now continuing. Could you help us with those improvements? Asked Emily excitedly. It would be a pleasure, Walter replied. It's been a long time since I worked on something so interesting. Jennifer watched the scene with growing irritation. You've all lost your minds. This isn't normal. Jennifer, Walter said calmly, I understand your concern, but your mother has found a worthy solution to a real problem. She isn't begging. She isn't depending on favors. She isn't bothering anyone. But she's living in a machine. She's living in a mobile residence that she herself designed and built. It's an impressive demonstration of autonomy and technical competence. Would you say that if it were your mother? Walter thought for a moment before answering. My wife is also a retired engineer. If she had the courage to do something like that, I would be very proud. During the following weeks, Walter visited the mobile home almost every day. He and Dorothy worked together, improving various systems. They installed better thermal insulation, optimized energy consumption, and created a rainwater collection system. Walter, can I ask a personal question? Said Dorothy one day. Of course. Why are you helping so much? Because I identify with your situation. How so? My retirement isn't enough to live comfortably either. My house is mortgaged, and if I can't pay it off in the next few years, I'll have to sell it. I had no idea. Many seniors face financial difficulties, Dorothy. The difference is you had the courage to look for a creative solution, while most of us just complain. Have you ever thought about building a mobile home too? Yes, I have. But I don't have the courage or the technical competence you have. The conversation was interrupted by a heavy rain that started suddenly. Dorothy and Walter ran inside the mobile home. The structure swayed slightly in the wind but remained stable. Can this construction withstand a storm? Asked Walter, watching the rain through the window. I've never tested it in such heavy rain. The test lasted 3 hours. Lightning cut across the sky, the wind blew hard, and the rain fell torrentially. The mobile home remained firm and dry. The rainwater collection system worked perfectly, filling the tanks. Impressive, said Walter when the storm passed. This structure is more resistant than many conventional houses. Do you really think so? I'm sure. The mobile base distributes forces very efficiently. The next morning, Ruth, Dorothy's neighbor from her previous house, appeared wet and nervous. Dorothy, I'm so glad I found you. Ruth, what happened? My house flooded in yesterday's rain. The roof opened a huge hole. The rain got into everything. Oh my, what a problem. Do you have somewhere to go? I don't. My children live far away. I can't bother the neighbors for long. Dorothy looked at Walter, who nodded understandingly. Ruth, you can stay here a few days. It's tight, but we'll manage. Here, in this thing? It's more comfortable than it looks, and not a single drop leaked yesterday. But I'm afraid... Afraid of what? Of this house walking, moving. It only moves when I tell it to. It's completely safe. Ruth ended up accepting the temporary hospitality. To her surprise, she slept better in the mobile home than she had slept in months in her own house, which had humidity problems and noisy neighbors. Dorothy, this house is quieter than mine, she commented on the second day. That's because it's isolated from the street noise. And it's warm. My house is always cold. The thermal insulation is very good. And this feeling that I can leave here and go anywhere, it's liberating. Ruth's experience spread through the neighborhood. Other people began to visit the mobile home out of curiosity, and many left impressed with the functionality of the construction. Mr. Martin, a 75-year-old retiree, was one of the visitors. Mrs. Dorothy, I've lived in the same house for 50 years. I'm tired of seeing the same walls, the same view from the window. Would you like to have a mobile home? I would love to, but I don't even know how to change a light bulb. It doesn't need to be exactly like mine. Each person has different needs. The conversation planted a seed in Dorothy's mind. What if she could help other seniors with similar solutions? That weekend, Kenneth Parker, the journalist who had written the first negative article, returned to the vacant lot. "Mrs. Dorothy, may I speak with you?" "That depends on the subject," and she replied, suspicious. "I want to write a new article. A different story." "About what?" "About what your invention truly represents." "I missed the mark in the first story, I admit." "Missed the mark how?" "I focused on the sensationalist aspects, instead of understanding the real importance of what you did." Dorothy fell silent, thinking. "Are you going to write the truth this time?" "I am, and I want to show how you are inspiring other people." "What other people?" "I heard that several seniors from the neighborhood have been visiting here, interested in similar solutions." "That's true, eh? Can I interview some of them too?" Dorothy spoke with Walter and Emily, who advised her to give the journalist a second chance. The new story was published 2 weeks later with the headline, "Female Ingenuity, Senior Creates Innovative Housing Solution and Inspires Community." The text highlighted Dorothy's technical training, explained the housing difficulties faced by low-income seniors, and presented the mobile home as an example of creativity and resilience. "Mum, did you see?" said Emily, waving the newspaper. "Now Grandma is getting the recognition she deserves." The positive response brought visitors from other neighborhoods. Engineering students from the State University came to see the construction. Technical course teachers brought their students to study the project. "Mrs. Dorothy," said Professor Vincent from the mechanics course, "would you consider giving a lecture for our students?" "A lecture? I've never given a lecture in my life." "It would be something informal. The students are fascinated by your creation, and it would be very educational to hear how you developed the project. I don't know if I'm any good at public speaking. You speak very well, and you have a unique experience to share." Dorothy ended up accepting. The lecture took place in the technical school's courtyard, with the mobile home parked in the center and about 40 students around. "When I started this project," she said, nervous at first, "I just wanted to solve my housing problem. I didn't imagine other people would be interested." "How did you get the idea?" asked a student. "By looking at the parts my husband left in the shed, I started imagining how they could fit together to form something useful." "Did you draw up the plans before starting?" "I made some sketches, but I mostly improvised as I built." "Isn't that dangerous?" asked a female student. "It can be if you don't understand the basic principles. But if you know about material resistance, structural strength, hydraulic systems, you can adapt as needed." "And if something goes wrong?" "Then you fix it." Engineering is a lot about solving problems as they come up. The lecture lasted 2 hours and ended with enthusiastic applause. Several students asked to take photos with Dorothy and asked specific technical questions about the construction. "Mrs. Dorothy," said Rachel, a final-year student, "you inspired me so much. I was thinking about dropping out of the course, but seeing that engineering can be used to solve people's real problems has motivated me to continue." "Why were you thinking of dropping out?" "Because the classes are very theoretical, and I wasn't seeing the practical application." "Theory is important, Rachel. I feel the lack of what I didn't learn. But you're right. Engineering only makes sense when it serves to improve people's lives." When she returned home that night, Dorothy was radiant. She had rediscovered a passion that had lain dormant for decades. "How was the lecture, Grandma?" asked Emily. "Wonderful. I felt useful in a way I haven't felt in years." "You've always been useful." "Yes, but in a different way. Taking care of the family is important, but using technical knowledge to solve problems also brings a special satisfaction." "That's what I want to do when I graduate." "You are going to be an excellent engineer, dear." She has talent, and above all a desire to help people. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Jennifer, who wore a serious expression. "Mum, I need to talk to you." "What is it now, Jennifer?" "I received a proposal for you." "What kind of proposal?" "Douglas Warner from the construction company Warner & Sons Wants to buy the mobile home project. Dorothy sat down slowly. Buy it how? He's offering $50,000 for the rights to the invention. You hand over the plans, he produces it commercially, and you're free from this life? This life how? Interrupted Emily. This nomadic life, with no fixed address, the subject of gossip. Mom, said Dorothy calmly, this house isn't just an invention. It's my home, it's my freedom. $50,000, Mom, you could buy a proper house, live comfortably. I am living comfortably. In a machine in the middle of a vacant lot. In a house I designed and built myself, where I can go anywhere, where I don't depend on rent or anyone's favors. Emily supported her grandmother. Grandma, you can't just hand over your creation like that. What it represents is far greater than $50,000. Emily, you're a minor, you don't understand money, Jennifer retorted. I understand dignity, Mum, and I understand that Grandma built something unique, something that could help a lot of people. Help who? She's living like a vagrant. I am not a vagrant, Jennifer, said Dorothy firmly. I am an independent woman who solved her housing problem with creativity and competence. Mum, accept the offer, please. Let me think about it. That night, Dorothy talked at length with Walter about the proposal. What do you think I should do? It depends on what you want for your life. I want to remain independent. I don't want to depend on anyone. Then $50,000 wouldn't solve your problem in the long run. In a few years, that money would run out, and you'd be back in the same situation. That's what I think. But Jennifer thinks I'm being stubborn. Jennifer is worried about you, but she doesn't understand what this house represents. What does it represent to you? It represents proof that age is no limitation to creating, innovating, solving problems. It represents authentic independence. It represents the courage to live unconventionally when the conventional doesn't work. Would you sell it if you were me? No, but I would make a counteroffer. What kind of counteroffer? Instead of selling the design, what about licensing the technology while keeping control over it? How so? You allow him to produce mobile homes using your ideas, but you remain the patent owner. You receive royalties from sales, and you can still develop different versions for specific needs. Is that possible? It's more complicated, but it's possible, and it would be much more advantageous for you. But I don't understand contracts, patents. Emily can study the legal side. I can help with the technical side, and you remain the inventor. The idea excited Dorothy, but it also made her anxious. Would it be too much responsibility for a 70-year-old woman? The following week, Douglas Warner came personally to the vacant lot to see the mobile home and pressure Dorothy to accept the offer. Mrs. Dorothy, my offer is generous. $50,000 cash, no complications. I appreciate your interest, Mr. Warner, but I cannot accept. Why? Do you have an objection to the amount? I object to handing over my creation completely. But you would make a lot of money. Money runs out, Mr. Warner. Knowledge and independence do not. You're being stubborn. Think of your age, the difficulties you might face. Walter, who was following the conversation, intervened. Excuse me, Mr. Warner. Mrs. Dorothy is considering licensing the technology instead of selling it. Licensing? That's very complicated. Complicated for whom? Asked Emily, who had just arrived from school. For everyone involved. Licensing contracts are complex. They require a lot of work. Are you afraid my grandmother's invention might be more valuable than what you're offering? Emily asked directly. Douglas was taken aback by the teenager's question. It's not fear, young lady. It's business experience. Then why won't you accept a licensing contract? If you really want to use the technology to help people, you should agree to pay royalties to the person who invented it. You don't understand how the market works. We understand how justice works, said Walter. And it would be fair for Mrs. Dorothy to maintain control over her creation. Douglas left irritated, but returned 3 days later with a modified proposal. A 10-year license with a 5% royalty on sales. This is an interesting proposal, said Walter after analyzing the contract. But it has some problematic clauses. How so? Asked Dorothy. He wants total exclusivity. You couldn't enter other partnerships or develop different versions. That doesn't seem fair to me. It's not. You should retain the right to develop your own work. What do you suggest? That we ask for help from a lawyer specialized in intellectual property. But that must be expensive. I have a retired colleague who works in this field. I can ask if he's willing to help. Attorney Gerald Foster, a 65-year-old retired lawyer, agreed to look at the case out of professional curiosity and sympathy for the cause. Mrs. Dorothy, your invention has significant market potential, he said after studying the documentation. Don't accept the first contract that comes along. But I don't understand anything about business. You don't need to understand everything. You need to have good advisors and maintain control over your decisions. What do you recommend? First, let's file a preliminary patent to protect your invention. Second, let's establish clear criteria for licensing. Third, let's look for other companies that might be interested. Other companies? Competition always improves negotiation terms. The patenting process took 2 months. During this period, news about the mobile home spread through social media and even reached television programs. "Grandma, you're going to be on TV," announced Emily excitedly. "On television? How so?" "The program Extraordinary Americans wants to do a story about you." "Oh my God, I don't know if I want to be on television." "Grandma, this is great. It will show the whole country what you've done. What if I embarrass myself? What if I say something foolish?" "You'll do just fine. You've already given talks to students, remember? The program was filmed right there on the vacant lot. The television crew was impressed with the functionality of the mobile home and made sure to film it in motion." "Mrs. Dorothy," asked the host, "what motivated you to create this invention?" "Necessity. I needed a place to live. I didn't have money to pay high rent. So I created my own solution. Do you consider yourself an inventor? I consider myself a woman who didn't give up when things got tough. What's people's reaction when they see your home?" "It varies a lot. Some find it strange, others get curious, but most understand it's an honest attempt to live with dignity. Do you have plans to commercialize the invention?" "I'm studying ways to share the technology to help other people in a situation similar to mine." "What advice would you give to other seniors facing difficulties?" "That they shouldn't be afraid to use the knowledge and experience they've accumulated. Age is not an obstacle to creating new solutions." The program aired on a Thursday night and had a great impact. The broadcaster's website received hundreds of positive comments about Dorothy's story. "What an inspiring woman, proof that we shouldn't give up on our dreams." "I wish I had Mrs. Dorothy's courage to solve my problems creatively. This lady is an example that the golden years can be a time of great achievements." The following week, Dorothy received phone calls from people across the country interested in building similar mobile homes. "Mrs. Dorothy, this is Patricia from Minnesota. I saw you on television and was very interested in the mobile home." "Hello, Patricia. How can I help you?" "I'm also a widow, and I also have financial problems. Do you think I could build a house like yours?" "It depends on your technical experience. Do you have any knowledge of mechanics or electronics?" "I don't, but my son is a mechanic. He could help me." "Then it's possible. I can email you the basic blueprints." "You would do that?" "Of course, the idea is to help people, not hide knowledge." Similar calls multiplied. Dorothy realized there was a real demand for alternative housing solutions for low-income seniors. "Walter," she said one afternoon, "I think we're facing something bigger than we imagined." "How so?" "These calls I'm getting. There are a lot of people needing housing alternatives." "That's true. The housing problem for seniors is much bigger than we thought." "What if we created a social project? Instead of just licensing to companies, how about teaching people to build their own mobile homes? That would be incredible, but it would be a lot of work." "Work doesn't scare me. At 70, I've discovered I still have a lot to contribute." Emily, who was listening to the conversation, got excited. "Grandma, we could create workshops, teach the basics of engineering, and help people adapt the design to their needs. Would you be willing to help with that?" "Yes, absolutely. It would be like an extension of my technical course. And you, Walter. It would be an honor to participate in a project like that." The idea began to take shape. Dorothy, Walter, and Emily spent weeks planning a training program in sustainable mobile housing. "The first workshop could be right here," suggested Dorothy. 10 people, weekend, 2 mobile homes as examples. We would need materials, tools, workspace, pondered Walter. And official authorization, added Emily. Everything has to be legal. How will we get the resources? Asked Dorothy. We can start small, suggested Walter. Each participant pays a symbolic fee that covers basic costs. What if we looked for partnerships with construction material companies? Suggested Emily. They could provide materials in exchange for publicity. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The first big opportunity arose when the City Hall organized a social innovation fair and invited Dorothy to participate. Mrs. Dorothy, said Claire Henderson, the event coordinator, we would like you to present your project to an audience of social investors and non-governmental organizations. Present how? A demonstration booth, a lecture on alternative housing, and if possible, bring your mobile home for display. It would be a great opportunity to find support for the social project, said Walter, when Dorothy told him about the invitation. Do you think it's worth it? I think it's essential. If we want to help more people, we need resources and partnerships. The fair took place at the city's convention center. Dorothy was nervous when she saw the size of the event and the number of important people present. Grandma, you're going to do great, said Emily, who accompanied her. Remember, you've already given lectures and been on TV. But this is different. There are very educated, very important people here. And you have something they don't, a real solution to a real problem. Dorothy's booth attracted constant attention during the 3 days of the fair. The mobile home, parked outside the convention center, became a tourist attraction. How did you get the idea? Asked a social investor. It was born out of necessity. I needed decent housing with limited resources. And did it work? It has worked perfectly for almost a year. What's the cost to build a house like this? It depends on the materials used. Mine cost about 3,000 rials because I used a lot of reclaimed scrap. And a commercial version. Walter calculated between 8,000 and 12,000 rials depending on the finishes. Interesting. Is there a market for this? I get inquiries almost every day. During the fair, Dorothy was approached by representatives from 3 different organizations. The first was an NGO that worked with affordable housing. Mrs. Dorothy, our organization builds houses for low-income families. We would like to include mobile homes as an option for people in specific situations. What kind of situation? Elderly people who don't want to leave their communities when they become widowed but can't maintain their homes. Families who need to move frequently for work. People facing eviction problems. The second was a social technology company. Our focus is to develop technological solutions for social problems, explained the representative. Your invention fits our profile perfectly. What would you offer? Resources to technically improve the design, produce enhanced prototypes, and create a scalable training methodology. The third was a foundation that funded educational projects. We are interested in the educational aspect of your project, said the coordinator. Teaching practical engineering to the elderly and youth in social vulnerability. How would that work? Vocational courses where people would learn engineering concepts by building their own mobile homes. They would leave with technical knowledge and a housing solution. Dorothy returned from the fair excited but also overwhelmed by so many possibilities. What do you think I should do? She asked Walter. I think you should choose partnerships that maintain your values and goals. What are my goals again? To help people in situations similar to yours, to share knowledge, to maintain your independence. And how do I know which partnership is best? By talking to each one, understanding their proposals in detail, and checking if they respect your vision. Dorothy decided to schedule individual meetings with each organization. The first meeting was with the Affordable Housing NGO. Our proposal is simple, said Amanda, the coordinator. We incorporate mobile homes into our catalog of housing solutions. You provide the technical design, we provide resources and specialized labor. Would I be involved in the construction process? You would participate as a technical consultant, but the execution would be our responsibility, and the people who would receive the houses. They would be selected by our usual social criteria, families in a state of housing vulnerability. Would they learn how to build? Not necessarily. The focus would be on delivering the ready-made solution. Dorothy left the meeting with mixed feelings. The proposal was generous, but it didn't include the educational aspect she considered important. The second meeting was with the social technology company. Our interest is to develop a version 2.0 of your mobile home, explained Richard, the technical director. A more automated, more efficient, more durable. What kind of improvements? Solar energy system, home automation, modern materials, optimized design. Wouldn't that make it too expensive? Initially, yes, but with production scale the cost would come down. And who would have access? We would start with a market of average purchasing power and gradually democratize the technology. So, the rich first, then the poor. It's a common commercial strategy to make innovations viable. Dorothy didn't like the approach. Her invention was born to help people without resources, not to create luxury products. The third meeting was with the Educational Foundation. Our vision is to transform your experience into an educational methodology, said Professor Virginia, the pedagogical director. Courses where people learn engineering principles by building solutions for their own needs. That sounds very interesting. Participants would leave with technical knowledge transferable to other situations, not just with a mobile home. How would it be structured? Theoretical modules interspersed with practice, concepts of material strength applied in welding the structures, hydraulics taught during the installation of water systems, basic electronics during the assembly of the controls. And the instructors? You would be the lead instructor, supported by teachers specialized in each technical area. I've never been a teacher, but you are the person who best knows the practical application of these concepts, and you've already demonstrated teaching talent in the lecture you gave. The Educational Foundation's proposal was the one that most aligned with Dorothy's values. She decided to accept, but with specific conditions. I accept, but I want to maintain control over the course content and how my invention is used. No problem. You would be the technical coordinator of the project. And I want Emily and Walter to participate as assistant instructors. If they have the necessary qualifications, it will be a pleasure. When would we start? Next semester. But first we need to develop the curriculum, prepare the space, select participants. The following months were intense. Dorothy, Walter, and Emily worked together with the Foundation's team, developing a course in Applied Engineering and Sustainable Housing. The program would be divided into 4 modules of 2 months each. 1. Basic engineering principles and problem analysis. 2. Materials, tools, and construction techniques. 3. Hydraulic, electrical, and automation systems. 4. Final project, construction of a mobile home. The unique feature of our course, explained Dorothy during a planning meeting, is that students will learn by doing. Each theoretical concept will be immediately applied in practice. And how do we ensure everyone will be able to keep up? Asked one of the teachers. By adapting each person's project to their abilities and needs. They don't all have to build houses identical to mine. How so? A person with mobility issues can focus on automation. A person skilled in carpentry can develop more elaborate structures. A person interested in sustainability can create energy and water collection systems. The personalization proposal was well received by the pedagogical team. This makes the course much more inclusive, commented Professor Virginia, and more relevant to each participant. The first pilot course had 20 participants, aged between 50 and 80. Half were women, and all faced some type of housing or mobility difficulty. Good afternoon, everyone, said Dorothy on the first day of class. I'm Dorothy, I'm 70 years old, and 2 years ago I was in the same situation as many of you, without a home, without money, without prospects. The students looked at each other with interest. The difference is that I was lucky to remember some things I studied decades ago and had the courage to try something new. You also have unique knowledge and experiences. Our work here is to transform that into practical solutions. Mrs. Dorothy, asked George, a 65-year-old retiree, do you think a layperson like me can build a house? George, you worked 40 years as an electrician, right? Yes. Then you know more about electrical installations than I did when I started. You are not a layperson. You have specific expertise. But I've never built an entire house. Nobody builds an entire house alone. You will use your electrical knowledge. Margaret over there will contribute sewing knowledge for the upholstery. Anthony will apply his experience as a carpenter. The collaborative approach worked better than expected. The students began helping each other, sharing specific knowledge. "It's amazing how each person has something important to contribute," commented Walter with Dorothy during a break. "That's what I learned building my house. Engineering isn't just calculation and theory, it's mainly combining different knowledge to solve problems. And you're teaching that naturally, because that's how I learned, in necessity, in practice, with trial and error." During the second module, the students began working in pairs, each pair developing a specific project. George and Margaret decided to create a mobile workshop to provide electrical and sewing services in rural communities. Anthony and Ruth, who had enrolled in the course after her positive experience staying at Dorothy's house, planned a mobile home adapted for people with mobility difficulties. Other groups worked on projects like a mobile library, a portable medical office, and a community kitchen on wheels. "You are going far beyond my original idea," said Dorothy proudly during an intermediate presentation. "It's just that you taught us to think about solutions, not just to copy," replied Margaret. "And each person has different needs," added George. "It didn't make sense for everyone to build the same thing." In the third module, the students learned more complex systems. Walter taught plumbing, Emily covered basic electronics, and guest professors addressed topics like solar energy and rainwater harvesting. "Mrs. Dorothy," said Ruth during a practical class, "I never imagined I could understand electrical circuits. Why? You took care of a house for 50 years. You know all the appliances, you know when they have a problem, you know how to save energy. Yes, but that's different. It's not that different. You already understand the system, you just didn't know the technical terms." "That's true. Household knowledge is applied technical knowledge. The difference is the vocabulary." This approach of connecting life experience with technical concepts became a trademark of Dorothy's teaching method. During the fourth module, the construction of the real mobile homes began. Each pair worked on their personalized version with continuous technical support from the instructors. "George and Margaret's house is turning out amazing," commented Emily to her grandmother. "They adapted very well. The electrical part is much more sophisticated than mine, and Anthony's has accessibility solutions we hadn't even thought of. That's what I wanted, for people to use my idea as a starting point, not as a fixed model." The graduation of the first course took place in the Foundation's courtyard, with the 10 mobile homes built by the students on display for the public. "6 months ago," said Dorothy in her speech, "you were people with housing problems. Today you are community engineers, capable of creating solutions for your own needs and for the needs of other people." "You changed our lives," said George, moved. "You changed your own lives. I only provided the tools." The ceremony was covered by the local press and gained attention on national television programs. Requests to replicate the course came from various cities. "Dorothy," said Professor Virginia, "we've received requests from Washington, D.C., Miami, Chicago, and Seattle to bring the course there." "Wow, what a responsibility." "Would you be willing to travel to these cities?" "I would, but how would we do that?" "Couldn't your mobile home be the ideal vehicle for these trips?" Dorothy laughed at the suggestion. "A national mobile home tour, why not?" The idea of traveling across the country teaching her methodology excited Dorothy, but it also made her reflect on the scale of the responsibility she had taken on. "Walter, do you think I'm going too far?" "How so?" "I started out just wanting to solve my housing problem. Now I'm planning to travel the country teaching engineering. And what's wrong with that? I'm 70 years old. Do I have the energy for all this?" "Dorothy, in 2 years you built a mobile home, created a teaching methodology, trained 20 community engineers, and became a national reference in alternative housing. If that isn't proof of energy..." "But what if I can't maintain the quality of teaching while traveling?" "Then you adapt. Engineering is about solving problems as they arise, remember?" The first trip of the national tour was to Washington, D.C. Dorothy drove her mobile home for 2 weeks to the capital, stopping in small towns along the way to test the structure's functionality on different terrains and in different climates. "The house is behaving very well on the road," she reported by phone to Emily. "And how is the trip going?" "Incredible. I stopped in 5 towns and in each one people were curious. I ended up giving several impromptu talks." "Talks about what?" "About independence in old age, about creativity to solve problems, about how engineering can improve the lives of ordinary people." In Washington, D.C., Dorothy taught a 1-week intensive course for 50 people. The methodology had to be adapted for the shorter format, focusing on basic principles and simplified projects. "The most interesting thing," she told the local team, "is how each region has specific needs. Here in Washington, D.C., the greater interest is in mobile homes for itinerant work. In the countryside of the Midwest, people wanted solutions to facilitate seasonal moves because of agricultural work. The tour lasted 6 months and went through 12 cities. In each location, Dorothy learned something new about applications for her invention. In Miami, she met fishermen interested in mobile structures to follow fish migration. In Chicago, she worked with engineers who wanted to adapt the technology for emergency housing in flood situations. In Seattle, she collaborated with urban planners, studying how mobile homes could be integrated into urban planning. "Grandma," said Emily during a video call, "you're becoming a national expert. I'm learning that the United States has very diverse housing problems and that simple solutions can be adapted to very different contexts." "And how are you feeling?" "Useful. For the first time in decades, I feel like I'm using my full potential." "Is Mom proud of you?" Jennifer still has doubts, but she's starting to understand that this isn't eccentricity. It's serious work. When Dorothy returned from the tour, a surprise was waiting. Jennifer had enrolled in the next Applied Engineering and Sustainable Housing course. "Mom," said Dorothy, moved, "it's so good to see you." "Hi, Mom. I came to enroll in your course." "Really? Why?" "Because I spent these months watching the stories about you on television, reading the articles in the newspapers, hearing people talk about how you changed their lives. And I realized I didn't know my own mother. I only saw the retired widow with financial problems. I didn't see the engineer, the inventor, the teacher." "Jennifer." "I'm sorry, Mom. I was afraid you'd get hurt, that you'd be embarrassed, that you'd suffer. But the one who was suffering was me, ashamed of not understanding. You don't need to apologize, dear. You were worried about me." "But I was worried for the wrong reasons. I thought you were running away from reality. In fact, you were creating a new reality." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Emily, who ran to hug her grandmother. "Grandma, how was the trip?" "Wonderful. And your mother is going to take the course." "Really, Mom? Really? I want to understand what my mother and my daughter are doing." The next course had a special dynamic. 3 generations of the same family working together. Dorothy as the lead instructor, Emily as the technical assistant, and Jennifer as the student. "It's strange having my mother as a teacher," commented Jennifer during a break. "Why?" asked Ruth, who was repeating the course to improve her project. "Because all my life I saw her as a mother, a homemaker. Now I see a competent professional teaching complex things." "She was always both those people," said Ruth. "You were only paying attention to one of them." "That's true." During the course, Jennifer decided to work on a specific project, adapting her mother's methodology for corporate workshops on creativity and problem-solving. "How so?" asked Dorothy when her daughter explained the idea. "Using mobile structure building as a teamwork exercise in companies. Employees would learn to work as a team by solving practical problems." "Interesting. And it would be an additional source of income for the social project. Companies would pay for the corporate workshops, subsidizing the free courses for low-income people. The proposal was innovative and was well received by the Educational Foundation." "Jennifer, your idea could make the project self-sustaining," said Professor Virginia. "How so?" "If we can get paying corporate clients, we wouldn't depend on donations and sponsorships to maintain the social courses anymore." The first corporate workshop was tested at a technology company in New York. 20 executives spent a weekend building a miniature mobile home, applying collaborative engineering concepts. "I've never learned so much about teamwork," commented one of the participants. "And I've never felt so fulfilled building something with my own hands," said another. The feedback was so positive that other corporate requests began to arrive. "Mom," said Jennifer, "I think we've found the ideal business model, using your methodology to generate income that funds the social project. And I continue with autonomy to define how the knowledge is shared." "You do. In fact, your autonomy becomes greater, because we no longer depend on decisions from external sponsors." 2 years after the start of the national tour, Dorothy had trained more than 500 community engineers across the country. Mobile homes built by students could be seen in dozens of cities, serving the most diverse functions. The project had evolved into a national network of applied technical education, with Dorothy as the general coordinator, Walter responsible for the technical part, Emily handling technological innovations, and Jennifer managing financial sustainability. "Dorothy," said Attorney Gerald, the lawyer who had helped her with the patents, "do you have any idea of the impact of what you've created?" "Impact how?" "Your invention generated a teaching methodology that has already been replicated in 12 states. Hundreds of people have decent housing because of your idea. Thousands have learned engineering principles they are applying in other areas of their lives. I just wanted to solve my housing problem." And in the process, she created a solution to the problem for many other people. "Do you know what makes me proudest?" "What?" "That people aren't just copying my house. They're creating their own versions adapted to their needs. That means they've truly learned engineering, not just memorized a recipe." The conversation was taking place at the Foundation's headquarters, where Dorothy had established a research center for social technology and sustainable housing. "And what are your plans for the coming years?" asked Attorney Gerald Foster. "To keep teaching, to keep learning. Every class teaches me something new about how to apply engineering to social problems, and the original mobile home. It's still my home. Now it has a permanent garage here at the Foundation, but I still travel in it to give courses." "You don't think about retirement?" Dorothy laughed at the question. "Retirement? At 72, I've finally found my true calling." The research center had become a national reference. Universities sent students for internships, municipal governments requested consulting for housing policies, and international organizations wanted to learn about the American methodology. "Grandma," said Emily, now a graduate in engineering and the center's technical coordinator, "a very interesting proposal has arrived." "What kind of proposal?" "The UN wants us to present our methodology at a housing conference in Geneva." "The UN? The United Nations?" "Yes, they're interested in adapting our approach for refugees and displaced populations." "Wow, that's very important. Would you agree to go to Geneva?" Dorothy thought for a moment. "Emily, when I was 20 and studying engineering, I never imagined that one day I'd speak at the UN about an invention of mine. And now I think it would be an incredible opportunity to show that simple solutions can have a global impact." The preparation for the international conference lasted 3 months. Dorothy, Emily, and Walter worked together with international cooperation experts to adapt the methodology for humanitarian contexts. "The challenge," explained Dorothy during a preparatory meeting, "is to maintain the simplicity and low cost, but adapt it to materials and tools available in emergency situations." "How would you do that?" asked a UN consultant. "By replacing welds with bolted connections, using standardized materials available in humanitarian kits, creating versions that can be assembled by people with no prior technical experience." "And the educational component?" "It would be adapted into intensive 3-day workshops. Enough time to assemble functional shelters and learn basic principles that can be applied to other needs." The trip to Geneva was the first time Dorothy had left the United States. She brought a functional miniature of the mobile home and audio-visual materials documenting 2 years of the methodology's application. "I'm nervous," she confessed to Emily on the plane. "Why, Grandma? I'm going to speak to experts from all over the world. What if they think our approach is too simple?" "Grandma, simplicity is a virtue, not a flaw, especially in humanitarian situations. The The presentation at the conference was a success. Representatives from 15 countries expressed interest in adapting the methodology to their local realities. "Your approach is revolutionary," said a delegate from Canada. "It combines individual autonomy with technical training. It's exactly what we need for refugees who don't know how long they'll stay in each location. And the educational component ensures people develop transferable skills," added a representative from Germany. "They don't become dependent on permanent external aid." At the end of the conference, a pilot project was created to implement the methodology in 3 refugee camps, one in Jordan, one in Kenya, and one in Colombia. "Mrs. Dorothy," said the project coordinator, "would you agree to supervise the adaptation of the methodology for these contexts?" "Of course, it would be an honor." "And would you have the availability to travel to these countries?" Dorothy looked at Emily, who nodded encouragingly. "Yes, I do. My home is mobile, remember? The work with refugees brought new challenges and learnings. In the Jordanian camp, Dorothy worked with Syrians who had specific knowledge in construction with scarce materials. Here we learned a lot about efficiency," she shared in a video conference with the team in the United States. "They taught us how to make structural connections, using only ropes and pipes without a single metal piece." In Kenya, she worked with local engineers, adapting the methodology for traditional African materials combined with industrialized components. "The creativity here is impressive," she reported. "They are using solar panels to power not only the home, but also work equipment. They transformed the mobile dwelling into a mobile workshop." In Colombia, she collaborated with indigenous communities who needed temporary structures during seasonal displacements. "Here we are learning about real sustainability," she said. "They showed us how to use materials that decompose naturally when no longer needed." Each international experience enriched the original methodology. When Dorothy returned to the United States, she brought dozens of innovations developed by the international partners. "The project has grown far beyond my original idea," she said during a meeting at the research center. "How do you feel about that?" asked Walter. "Proud and a little awed. When I built my first mobile home, I was just a lady trying to solve a personal problem. Now it has become a methodology applied on 4 continents. And what are the next steps? To keep learning. Each new context teaches me something I didn't know about engineering and about people." At 75, Dorothy had become a world reference in mobile housing and social technology. Her story was studied in universities, her methodology applied by humanitarian organizations, and her original mobile home was on display at the American Engineering Museum. But for her, the most important thing was the transformation she saw in the people who went through the courses. "Dorothy," said Ruth, now a certified instructor of the methodology, "you completely changed my life." "How so, Ruth? How so?" "Before I saw myself as a widow with no prospects. Now I see myself as an engineer capable of solving problems. It's a total change of identity." "And you're not the only one. I've been receiving letters from former students telling how they applied the principles they learned here in other areas, fixing equipment, improving their homes, helping neighbors." "That's what makes me proudest," said Emily. "Grandma doesn't just teach how to build mobile homes, she teaches how to think like an engineer. And thinking like an engineer is useful for any problem," added Walter. "It's a way of approaching challenges that can be applied in any situation." Official recognition came when Dorothy received the title of Honorary Doctorate from the State University, where she had studied decades before. "Professor Dorothy Mitchell," said the dean during the ceremony, "represents the best of American engineering. Creativity applied to social problems, knowledge generously shared, and proof that innovation has no age." "Thank you," replied Dorothy during her acceptance speech, "but I want to dedicate this title to all the people who had the courage to build solutions for their problems instead of just lamenting them." The celebration party took place on the land where it all began, the old vacant lot that was now the official headquarters of the Dorothy Mitchell Research Center. "Grandma," said Emily during the party, "when you built your first mobile home, did you imagine it would lead to this?" "Never, dear. I just wanted a decent place to live. And you ended up creating decent places for hundreds of people." "Actually, I only provided the tools. Each person created their own solution." That's the most beautiful part, said Jennifer, approaching the two. Mum, you never tried to control how people used your ideas. You always encouraged creativity and adaptation. Because engineering isn't a cookie-cutter recipe, replied Dorothy. It's a way of thinking, and each person thinks according to their own experience and needs. The family conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a surprise, a delegation from all the countries where the methodology had been implemented, bringing samples of the locally adapted mobile homes. Mrs. Dorothy, said the representative from Jordan, we want to show you how your idea has evolved around the world. For 2 hours, representatives from 15 countries presented the local versions of the mobile home, from mobile igloos in Canada to wheeled stilt houses in Thailand. It's incredible, said Dorothy, moved. Each one is completely different from mine, but they all apply the same basic principles. That's exactly what makes your methodology so powerful, said the representative from Germany. You didn't export a product, you exported a way of thinking. And that way of thinking is adaptable to any cultural and geographical context, added the delegate from Kenya. When the party ended and the international guests departed, Dorothy sat in the doorway of her original mobile home, contemplating the illuminated research center. What are you thinking about, Grandma? Asked Emily, sitting beside her. About how things have changed, and about how fundamentally they've stayed the same. How so? The scale, the reach, the recognition have changed, but the essence remains the same. People using creativity and knowledge to solve practical problems. Are you satisfied with what you've built? I am, but mainly I'm happy to have discovered that it's never too late to start over. Start over how? At 70, when I lost my home, I could have given up. I could have accepted that my productive life was over. Instead, I discovered I was beginning my most important phase. And what made the difference? The difference was not being afraid to use what I knew, even after decades without practice, and not being afraid to learn new things. Like what? Like how to teach, how to travel, how to work in a team, how to speak in public. At 75, I'm still learning new skills. Jennifer joined the conversation, bringing coffee for the three of them. Mum, can I make a confession? Of course, dear. When you started with this mobile home, I was embarrassed. I thought people would laugh at our family. And now? Now I'm proud. Proud to have a mother who didn't give up, who created something important, who changed lives. Jennifer, and especially proud to have learned from you that age isn't a limitation. It's just a new phase with different possibilities. The three women sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the stars. You know what impresses me the most? Said Emily finally. What? How Grandma's story proves that big solutions can start with small problems. How so? Grandma needed a place to live. A small, personal problem. The solution she created ended up helping thousands of people around the world. A global problem. That's true, said Dorothy. When you genuinely solve your own problem, you often discover that other people have similar problems. And when you generously share the solution, it grows beyond what you imagined, added Jennifer. That's why I always insisted on teaching instead of just selling, said Dorothy. Knowledge sold remains restricted. Knowledge taught multiplies. And transforms, said Emily. Each person who learns adds something new. Exactly. My original mobile home was good for me, but the adaptations people have made are better for them, and some of those improvements have benefited everyone. Like the solar power system we learned in Kenya, exemplified Jennifer. And the rapid construction techniques the Syrian refugees developed, added Emily. Dorothy stood up and walked to her mobile home, running her hand affectionately over the metal legs. This structure gave me much more than housing, she said. It gave me purpose, identity, community, and set an example for thousands of people, said Jennifer. An example of what? That problems can be opportunities, that knowledge doesn't age, that creativity has no age, that independence is possible at any stage of life. And most importantly, added Emily, that helping others is the best way to help yourself. Dorothy smiled, entering her mobile home. Come here, girls. I want to show you something. Inside the home, She opened a drawer and took out the notebook where she had made the first sketches of the project. "Look at these drawings. Simple, full of mistakes, hastily scribbled." The three of them leafed through the notebook, seeing the evolution of the idea from the first scribbles to the detailed plans. "It's impressive to see how it all began," said Emily. "The most impressive thing," said Dorothy, "is to see how it hasn't ended. The project keeps evolving, being adapted, improved. Do you think it will keep evolving?" "I'm sure. Because every person who learns the basic principles creates their own version. And each new version teaches something to the next generation of builders." "That's immortality, isn't it?" said Jennifer philosophically. "How so?" "An idea that keeps growing and transforming even after the one who created it is no longer here." Dorothy thought about her daughter's observation. "Perhaps it is, but for me the most important thing is that the idea is alive now, helping people now." "And it will keep helping," said Emily, "because it's a simple and powerful idea. Use what you know to solve what you need." "And share what you learn," added Jennifer. "And don't be afraid to try new things," completed Dorothy. The three hugged inside the small mobile home that had started it all. Outside, the research center was quiet, but not empty. In the workshops, prototypes of new versions of mobile homes awaited the next day's tests. In the classrooms, materials were prepared for the next group of students. In the archive, documentation of hundreds of projects carried out by former students around the world. "You know what makes me proudest?" said Dorothy, looking out the window at the complex that had grown around her original home. "What, Grandma?" "That all of this exists not because I am special, but because anyone can be special when they use their knowledge to help other people. All the people who have passed through here have discovered that," said Jennifer. "Yes, and that is the real lesson. No matter your age, your social condition, your background. If you have a real problem and the courage to seek creative solutions, you can create something important. And if you share what you learn, you can change the world," added Emily. Dorothy smiled, watching the stars through her mobile home window. "I don't know if we changed the world," she said, "but I know we changed some people's lives, and those people changed other people's lives, and so on." "That is changing the world, Grandma, person by person. One mobile home at a time," laughed Dorothy. The three laughed together, embraced within the small structure that had become a symbol of how determination and creativity can overcome any limitation imposed by age or circumstance. End of story. So, dear listener, what did you think of this inspiring story of Mrs. Dorothy? Do you know any elderly person who has faced similar challenges? How did this story make you reflect on the possibilities of one's later years? Leave your honest opinion in the comments. We want to know what touched your heart the most. Don't forget to leave your like if the story moved you, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories that show how determination can transform lives. Your participation is essential for us to continue bringing these narratives that celebrate the strength and wisdom of those who still have so much to contribute to the world.